What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Until Jacksonville podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Mayne, and boy, am I excited for this, actually. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Until Jacksonville podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Mayne, and I am so excited for this super stacked slate. We got a stacked show for you. I'm coming a little bit later in the week than we normally do. Normally, we try to get this in, Friday morning, Friday afternoon. We're getting it in Saturday morning. Whenever this ends up posting, there'll probably be some games getting kicked off, but I'm going to go ahead and get this recorded, get some of my thoughts out here. A lot of the games I'm going to be talking about don't kick off until tonight anyway, but this is just absolutely a loaded weekend. We have so much football to talk about. I've been looking forward to this weekend specifically since probably mid-January. I have been looking forward to this weekend. We have an absolutely loaded slate. You got Alabama going to Georgia. You got Oregon going to Penn State. You got LSU going to Ole Miss. You got Auburn going to Texas A&M. You got some sneaky games with Notre Dame at Arkansas, Ohio State at Washington, Indiana at Iowa, and Tennessee at Mississippi State. Got some interesting games there. I'll react a little bit towards the end about the FSU debacle last night. It was a rough night for my Seminole family. It was a rough way to get your first loss of the season. Crazy cool field storming though. That was pretty fun to watch. But thought FSU was going to find a way to win that game, and they did not. But I will save that for the end of the show. We got to jump right into it. To me, the biggest game of this weekend, I know technically the rankings-wise, Oregon and Penn State's a little bit higher, but to me, this Georgia and Alabama game is the biggest game of this weekend. These are two absolute titans, two behemoths of programs, a team that dominated the 2010s, a team that's dominated the 2020s, and every time they've clashed, it's been a great game. It's been hard fought, a lot of blown leads, things like that in these different games. Unfortunately, as a Georgia fan, we have come on the losing end of several of them. Going back all the way to 2008, we played them 10 times, and we have lost 9 of those 10 games. Kirby Smart, since he's been the head coach of Georgia, he has gone 1-6. He has 19 total losses in his now 10th season at Georgia, and he has had a third of them come to the Crimson Tide. So absolutely a big game, huge game, and ranked number 17th in the country doesn't look as big as if they would have been undefeated at this point. But you can't tell a single Georgia fan this is not an important game. You can't tell an Alabama fan this is an important game. I feel like in the recent years since Kirby's been at Georgia, Alabama has slowly but surely worked its way up into making it into being a huge rival with Georgia. I think most Georgia fans, when you talk about the teams that you hate the most right now, most of them would say Florida, and you'd have some Auburn in there, some Georgia Tech in there possibly, depending on if they have any family that are Georgia Tech fans, maybe some Tennessee. But you're going to hear Alabama pretty quickly. I mean, to me as a Georgia fan, I feel like I hate Alabama more than any team except Florida. So for me, this is a huge matchup, and I'm sure Alabama fans would say the same thing about, to them, Auburn's their biggest, but pretty soon up under that, maybe under LSU, Georgia's definitely been a huge rival. 10 of the last 11 years, the winner of this game, either one of these two programs, have won the SEC championship game. This is a huge matchup. So I'm going to go right into breaking it down. To me, I'm going to start with, on the side of the ball, Georgia on offense, Alabama on defense. I think line of scrimmage play in this game, just like any other, is going to be so important. The thing that I'm worried about as a Georgia fan is against Tennessee, we had a very bad right tackle situation. Our guy who normally plays right tackle, Ernest Green, was playing very injured, very hurt. You could tell he was just not playing well. We got Michael Unai in there playing for most of that game, and love him to death. He's big. He was not playing well at all, especially pass protection. There were several times where the defensive end would just get it to Gunnar Stockton immediately. Late in the game, we put in Bo Hughley at that right tackle spot. So I'm thinking if we can do that, if we can have him there, really lock down that spot, that's the most important thing, because I feel good about Georgia's offensive line because of that. But in this matchup of Alabama's front seven versus Georgia's offensive line, until I see that right tackle be consistent, whoever it's going to be, I'm going to slightly lean Alabama in that regard. But if you tell me, hey, Bo Hughley plays and he plays great, then I'm all for it, and I am all back on board of Georgia having a great offensive line. Juan Gaston is back. He's a true freshman, started for Georgia game 1, and he started at right guard. Had some kind of a rotation there after he got hurt. Donnie Glover ended up really locking down that spot, Dontrell Glover. And now that Juan Gaston is back, he's more of a tackle body type, true freshman to start at Georgia. I mean, he's the first true freshman to start at Georgia on offensive line, period, dating all the way back to 2017 when we had Andrew Thomas starting. And now he's probably the best tackle in the league, if not one of the very top. So he's been the guy he's kind of been compared to. So he's off the injury report. He should be full go. I'd like to see him maybe play that right tackle spot, but we'll kind of see how that plays out when the game happens. When it comes to a run game, though, I know this kind of goes hand in hand with the line of scrimmage. I feel really good about Georgia's run game. It's looked much better this year than it really has the last 2 years. I think having a mobile quarterback, and not that he's Lamar Jackson, but Gunnar Stockton is a good runner, a willing runner, and he can do a lot of great things, especially when he gets north and south, can make guys miss, can even sometimes truck a guy over. Very physical. So I think having that helps you so much because football is so much of a numbers game. And when you have two backside defenders sitting for a half a second, making sure the quarterback didn't pull the ball, that's two less guys the offensive line doesn't have to block, which then can lead you up to get a really good gain, and the running back can outrun those backside defenders. So I think the run game in general, especially just depending on how our right tackle situation is. But overall, I would say our run game is good and it should be consistent. It was consistent against Tennessee, and having an extra guy like Josh McCray really finally starting to step in. You get in the red zone, he's the guy that's getting the ball. I'd be excited to see kind of how that rotation is at running back. How creative do they get? Did they every bag up their trick, every trick up their sleeve, every bag of trips? Do they use all of it to get out of kneeling with a win? Or they still got some waiting for this big matchup? So for the run game for Georgia's offense, I'm going to slightly lean UGA on that matchup. Passing game, going to talk about more so the weapons with this one. I think Georgia has proven this season so far, I know we've only played 3 games, but they have proven that their weapons are so much better than they were last year before, and really several years. And the first couple of games were playing cupcakes. They're playing, drop 8 coverage. They're backing up. They're just trying not to let anyone get over top of them. They're just trying to let everything be underneath and just rally and tackle to the football. But against Tennessee, they ran a lot of man coverage against Georgia, and we put up 44 points. And I think that has to do with just having better weapons. And for Alabama, statistically, their pass defense is really good. But if you look at per pass attempt, it's actually not that great. But teams that they've played haven't thrown the ball very much. You look at FSU, they ran the ball a ton. They didn't really pass it very much. You look at, they played UL Monroe. They were just trying to run the ball and get it out of there alive. And then you look at Wisconsin, same kind of thing. They ran the ball a lot, and they just didn't have the opportunity to really pass it much. They tried to go quick, whatever else, but they didn't really try to air it out either. They haven't really played a team that's as good as passing as Georgia. They haven't played as good of weapons as Georgia. So that's a huge matchup to watch in this game, is their defensive backs versus these Georgia weapons, because they're going to be in man-to-man coverage. And when you're in man-to-man coverage, I think Gunnar Stockton plays more confident. I think also it's just a lot easier to make a decision when instead of going, okay, I have to read this guy, I got to look for these windows. I think they're in this coverage. Let's see what happens post-snap. When you see their man coverage and you just know, I like my guy to beat that guy, then all you got to do is drop back, throw it up. And so they did that repeatedly in the Tennessee matchup. Can they do that again for this Alabama matchup? Just because of how high I am on the Georgia weapons, I will also lean for the pass game in that situation. Slightly lean Georgia on that. But that's a huge matchup for today. For Georgia's defense versus Alabama's offense, we kind of switched that side of the ball for now. The line of scrimmage, I am high on Georgia's defensive front. I think they have a very good defensive line. I think they have probably the best linebackers in the country. For me, the biggest question right here is for Alabama's offensive line, they have a lot of big guys. They are very big, but if you watch them on tape, they just look big and slow. They don't look athletic. They get beat by speed rushes very easily, and Georgia has a lot of big bend and speed on that end position. So can they get past those tackles? Can they pressure Ty Simpson? Ty Simpson is not the type of runner that Jalen Milroe was. He is about a similar runner to Gunner, where he's a willing runner and he can when he needs to. With the past couple weeks, he's been dialed passing the ball. I think the way they win this game is going to be from throwing for 300 plus passing yards. I don't think there's a way that they can win the game without having a great day in the air. But line of scrimmage wise, I do like the defensive front for Georgia in this game. They did a good job against Tennessee again, and really limiting the run game. And so we'll see there. But I think Georgia has enough athleticism on defense to really make Alabama pay with just having a bunch of big bodies that aren't athletic. For the run, so I'll lean Georgia there. For the run game, I'll slightly lean Georgia. Actually, no, I'll lean it pretty heavily. And here's why. Alabama the past couple of years has not been able to have a traditional run game. And by traditional, I mean hand it off to the running back and run the ball. Last year, all of their running success came from the legs of Jalen Milroe, their quarterback, because he was an absolute freak and was probably the most dangerous player in college football last year when he had the ball in his hand. So that's what I'm going to be looking for in that is, can they just hand it off to the running back and get 4 or 5 yards a carry? I don't think they will, but that's against two pretty bad teams. They weren't able to run the ball consistently against FSU. Even last year in the same matchup, Georgia and Alabama, I think they had 3 or 4 traditional carries like that. Every other run attempt was from the quarterback. Oh, their best running back has been out all year. He's expected to play in this game, Jam Miller. But if you're not able to move people on the defensive line move the defensive line, if you're not able to really get a push, then it's really going to limit them. So I'm going to pick Georgia in that category. And then for the pass game, this is a pretty big toss-up to me. I would say I slightly lean Alabama here, and here's why. So for Alabama, their weapons have a couple of the best weapons in the country. I think Ryan Williams, for 90% of teams in the country, 95%, would be their best offensive weapon. I think if you look at Jeremy Bernard, their number 2 receiver, I think 90% of teams in the country, he'd be their best wide receiver. So that matchup there against Georgia's DBs will be huge. And if you look at the Tennessee game, Georgia's issue on defense with those big explosive plays, it wasn't like these cornerbacks were getting absolutely cooked and they had 10 yards of separation. Great. They were stride for stride. They were in position and just didn't come down with the play. And a couple of those guys that got picked on are guys who just have not played a lot. So do they grow up in this game? Does a very similar play happen where Daniel Harris is in perfect position and then just mistimed his jump and then gets mossed over and they give up a huge play or touchdown? Or similar to Ellis Robinson, he's basically fallen over. The guy kind of trips, goes to tackle him, kind of gets pass interference, but doesn't really tackle him, still gets the catch, and he runs with it. Or in the same situation, do they time up their jump properly? Do they get their eyes on the ball, and do they high point the ball? Can they get interceptions in situations, or at least break it up? So I would rather be in a position where, man, they got a couple picks, but half the time they're just way out of position. Or rather than they're always in position, they're always solid, but they just aren't quite coming up with those, because those will come, especially with experience. But again, these are great weapons. I think the biggest thing that gives Georgia an edge in this spot is Georgia's pass rush. Like I said earlier when I talked about the line of scrimmage, I just think they have a lot of athletic, fast guys that are able to bend on that outside edge, trying to get around those tackles for Alabama. I think the pass rush is going to get there. Traditionally, does not do great with sacks throughout a season, but when they really need to, they dial things up. So far this year, they haven't done a lot of sending pressure. They've just been rushing for. So do they really try to get after him? Do they trust their guys in man coverage? And if they're able to do that, then you're able to afford sending more pressure. But we will just have to see with that if they're able to trust their back end enough, because Kirby Smart, what he does is if he can rush 4 and get home, he'd much rather do that, which really anyone does, but he really wants to protect his DBs, not give up explosive plays. But if they're locking them down, then that's when you're going to see him start to send more pressure. And that's a big, huge aspect there. And I think probably the biggest situation, the biggest thing about this game to me is this is played in Athens, Georgia. This game has not been played in Athens in 10 years. The last time it was played in Athens, this matchup, Kirby Smart was the defensive coordinator for Alabama. He has never had to play Alabama in Athens. He's never gotten that opportunity. Coming into the season, I said, I think this will be the best home field advantage, the most electric atmosphere in all of college football for this season is this Georgia and Alabama game. Georgia has been at the top of the sport for the past several years, but they have not been able to really just crush the Alabama dream. They have not been able to get the monkey off their back. They have not been able to stop them consistently. They got over them to get over that hump in the 2021 national championship game, but since then has not been able to. 2023, you were undefeated in the regular season, lose by 3 in the SEC championship, and you missed the playoff. And that was a very good Georgia team that year. Last year, we went to Tuscaloosa. We're down 28-0 at one point, ended up eventually climbing our way back in, took the lead. Ryan Williams has a great play, and then we end up losing the ball game. So can we create an atmosphere that we're able to cause false starts? We're able to limit the communication. I mean, there was a play last year for Georgia, for example, where Carson Beck changed the play before at the line of scrimmage for the play and checked to a wide receiver screen. And the wide receiver that was supposed to be catching the ball didn't hear it because of how loud the stadium was. And so he doesn't run the route. And when it's a screen pass like that, the quarterback's not reading anything. He's literally catching it and throwing it immediately. He's getting the ball out of his hands as quick as he can. And in that situation, the guy didn't just stop like he was supposed to. He started running a route. Well, then what happens? It goes straight into the arms of a DB, and that leads to a very easy touchdown for Alabama. Is Georgia able to have moments like that in this game with the momentum, with the crowd being huge? And that's going to be huge in this matchup. And speaking of penalties, Georgia's 11th in the country in penalties. They're a very good team when it comes. They're very disciplined. For example, last week they went to Knoxville and they didn't get a single false start with all that crowd noise. Alabama is 82nd in the country when it comes to penalties with yardage and penalties per game. So my question here is, can they be disciplined? Because I don't think Alabama can come in here undisciplined and get a lot of penalties and come out with a win. I think either team in this game is going to have to play very close to perfect. Alabama had a big away game earlier this season when they played at FSU, and they had 3 false starts against FSU. Do they do something similar? Do they get more? Do they get less? That's a huge thing to watch in this football game. But my final pick for this, as you can probably imagine, is going to be Georgia because, man, I want it so bad. I want Georgia to win so bad. I can't even describe how I'm feeling talking about this game, thinking about this game. As a fan, I have so much anxiety about this game, and I'm just terrified that things are going to go wrong. And we've seen it so many times. We've seen Georgia be in the lead for a lot of the game, and then they come back and win. Or Georgia's behind, and then we catch up, and we feel like we're responding, and then they just, do one little play. They just do one play to Ryan Williams, or they have one miraculous play where they beat us, and we lose. And so many times, been so disappointed. My first year really, really watching college football, really being dialed in on it was 2012. We went an SEC championship and lost to Bama with a national championship trip on the line. Would have splattered Notre Dame's blood on the walls just like Alabama did. It was very close to, but Aaron Murray ran out of time. We had the ball on the 4-yard line and the clock hit 0, and we just couldn't quite punch it in. And that was the biggest heartache I've probably ever felt in my life. Worse than any breakup you could ever imagine. Worse than any tragedy that I've been through. That tore me to shreds. And ever since then, I've had that hate in my heart for Alabama, and so many times that has been repeated. And we've been up again in 2017 in the national championship and lost. We've been up in the 2018 SEC championship and lost. I mean, there's so many examples that we can use of Georgia's hopes are high and then they crush it. So I'm ready for that to stop. I didn't mean to spend this much time talking about this one game. This is an important game. Obviously, as a Georgia fan, I got a lot of thoughts on this game. So I am so excited for this matchup, and when this game is over, I'm either going to be on cloud 9, happiest I've been in a long time, or I will be so upset. So I'm really hoping it's not the second, not the latter, because I'm excited for this game, but I'm also a little bit scared. Going to move over to the Oregon-Penn State game, and this is kind of interesting to me. I was looking last night at just kind of different stats and stuff, kind of trying to make my notes for this podcast today, and Oregon is a 3.5-point underdog at Penn State. And I know Happy Valley is a great environment and it's a great stadium. They're doing a whiteout at night, which is going to be electric, I'm sure. They haven't done a whiteout at night in several seasons. So they are very, very pumped for this. College game day is going on right now as I'm doing this podcast. They are in Happy Valley. They are enjoying that just amazing atmosphere, I'm sure. But to me, I feel like Oregon should be favored in this matchup. I think Oregon has been the most impressive team on paper this season, offense and defense combined. I think Penn State has looked like Penn State. And kind of similar to when I talked about Clemson a couple weeks ago and talked about when they haven't been doing well. And I talked about how people had high expectations for Clemson because they had all this returning production. They had all these returning players. But then the season started and they found out, oh, we're just actually just as good as we were. We're not better than we were. It's just this guy is who he is. And that's across the board. So far from Penn State, which they have not been tested, so we don't know for sure. But they've had a few easy games, but they have not been explosive at all. They have just been a run the ball and win ugly type team. And I just don't know if they can do that and beat Oregon today. Last year, they matched up against each other in the Big Ten championship game. And in that game, similar to most football games, I thought, man, if Penn State can run the ball consistently, I think they'll win that game probably. They ended up losing by 8. I think it was 37-45. They had 297 rushing yards in that game for 8.7 yards a carry. That should win you any ball game. But Oregon was more explosive. And I think that's going to be the case this year, even though Penn State is probably going to have a really good run game today. I think Oregon is more explosive, and I think their defense is legit, and I think Penn State's offense can be very anemic at times, and if they're not able to really push the ball downfield, everything's just underneath and running the ball, then I think they're going to just be out-schemed, out-physicaled, and I think Oregon runs away with it here in Penn State. Now, I think with the home field advantage, I think it's still a good team, so I think it'll be close, but I see no reason why Oregon should not win this game outright, let alone cover a spread. So, gonna pick Oregon in this football game. Again, I just think they're more explosive. I think they're more consistent. I think Dante Moore has been playing very good football at the quarterback position. And I trust Dan Lanning. He's been through a lot of these bigger type games. He's made some mistakes in some of them. I think he's learned from those. I think he plays up in this. And I think Penn State is still Penn State. I think they beat the teams they're supposed to. I think they lose the teams they're supposed to. And they just go 10-2, make the playoff. And then, we got to play Boise. We'll win that. We got to play SMU. We'll win that. But then we play a legit team, Notre Dame, and we're going to fold and we're not going to win that game. Next up is number 4 LSU at number 13 Ole Miss. Super excited for this game. If it wasn't for the other 2 games I've broke down so far, this is definitely my favorite game of the favorite matchup of the week. This is an electric game. This is always a fun game to watch. Last year, Ole Miss went to LSU, and LSU did not lead for a single moment in that game. They were either tied or Ole Miss was winning for every second of that game and overtime until the very last play when LSU hit a walk-off touchdown and they won the game. So in this, do you see something similar? I think it's electric. Every time these teams play, it's been really good as of late. Even a couple years ago, I think of like when Jane Daniels was there and they had, it was 2023 and it was, I think 95 points or something were scored in this game. It was super high scoring, super fun to watch. I'm expecting something similar here, but I don't think it'll be as high scoring, and here's why. LSU's offense has been pretty bad this year. They have not looked great. Now, they've had some good defenses they've gone against, such as Clemson, such as Florida, but they also kind of struggled against Louisiana Tech. So their run game has not been consistent at all, averaging 3.7 yards a carry on the season. Just not good. They have not been able to run it consistently. I think I read last night that their starting running back is expected to be injured. Caden Durham, I think is his name. So he's expected to be out. I think that really hurts them. I think their offensive line has just been bad. I think they lost a couple really great tackles to the NFL, and they're doing great in the NFL, but the guys that are taking their spot are not nearly as good. And I think Nussmeier, even kind of battling through some injury, I think he's played pretty well. And I think the weapons are solid, but they're not protecting Garrett Nussmeier. They're not giving them a consistent run game. And it's just hard to move the ball when you have that. I talked about this not that long ago, how I thought they would be a team that would kind of start the year slightly slow, but then kind of crescendo and build up very quickly. And they just haven't done that so far. On the other side of the ball, one thing I'm really interested to see is who starts a quarterback for Ole Miss. I think they're both 2 great options. If you're at home, you're listening to this and you don't know the names of the quarterbacks and you know nothing about these quarterbacks, just listen to the names. Who would you rather have starting a quarterback? A guy named Austin Simmons or a guy named Trinidad Chambliss? That guy's a winner, and that's a cool name. And I think that name alone should get him the starting spot. Austin Simmons was in starting early in the year, got hurt. Trinidad Chambliss has stepped up, and he has played great, I think, the past couple games for them. I think he's been a very consistent runner. He's really elevated their run game because of his legs. So in this game, I think I would probably lean Trinidad to start this game, but either quarterback, I think they'll be fine. I think their offense is going to be good. It's under Lane Kiffin. Their defense hasn't been great, but also LSU just makes offense look hard. So in this, my biggest question is, can Ole Miss keep offense difficult for LSU? Because if they can, I do believe Ole Miss will score some points, even though I really believe in Blake Baker and I like LSU's defense. Ole Miss is still going to find some points. Lane Kiffin is still going to find some points. And if that's the case, then I just don't see an avenue where LSU ends up winning this game. It's at Ole Miss. They have the home field advantage. And coming into the season, I thought this was definitely going to be an LSU win. But as the game has approached, I just like Ole Miss more. I think on a neutral field, I like them more slightly. And this game's at home for them. So even more reason to side with them. I'm going to lean Ole Miss in this football game. Next up, Auburn at Texas A&M. This is a very fun game to pay attention to. Now, there's a lot of other games going on at the same time, so it'll be hard to pay attention to this one for me, at least live. I think it's going to be really good. I think Auburn's still a good team, even though they lost Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's just also good. Texas A&M has done well this year. They obviously had a great win at Notre Dame early in the season. So I'm excited to see how this game plays out. It's at College Station. It's at Texas A&M, 100,000+, doing all their hem and hawn, doing all their yell leader stuff, which is so stupid, but it gets the people going, as Will Ferrell once said. But in this, Texas A&M's passing game to me has been very explosive, but very inconsistent. They have a lot of receivers with a very similar body type. They don't usually, most offenses, you'll have a guy that's a little bit bigger, more of a, just throw it up to him and he'll go up and catch it. Maybe he's 6'5", 210, he's a bigger guy. And then you'll maybe have a couple guys that are, oh, well, this guy is a little bit smaller, but he's insanely fast. Or this guy, you try to have different styles. I think a lot of their guys are just a very similar body type, more Z-like receivers, more just blazers. But it works for them because they're very explosive. And I always am kind of back and forth when I watch a team. And even when they're explosive, they're also inconsistent. I think South Carolina's kind of struggled with that this year. At times, you're like, wow, that was an insanely long touchdown pass or touchdown run. That's awesome. They're explosive. But then they go 3 and out, 3 drives in a row. But I do like the thing that helps them that South Carolina doesn't have is they have a better offensive line and a more consistent running game. And when you have a more consistent running game, it just makes all offense easier, really opens up a lot of things. And the defense is worried about the run game. They're also worried about the pass. They don't know what to defend. And it just, when you can just run the ball on 2nd and 10, and now you're living in 3rd and 6, instead of passing it again, getting another incomplete pass, now you're in 3rd and 10. I mean, that makes a huge difference in a football game. You win in the margins in the game of football. So in this, I also like Mike Elko's defense, especially against I don't want to say predictable, but a more RPO heavy offense. Looked last week whenever Auburn played Oklahoma, and Brent Venables, he does a great job of lying to people. He does a great job of just, you see something, but you end up seeing something different. And I trust Mike Elko against an offense that's going to be running a lot of RPOs. I think he's smart enough and talented enough to make his guys look like they're going to be doing one thing but end up doing another. But similar to other matchups, if you see them running a lot of man coverage, can they beat those weapons? I think Auburn's got one of the best wide receiver cores in the entire country. So that's going to be something to factor in and watch. But I just don't think they'll be able to have a consistent run game. I don't think the RPO game will work great. I think you're looking to just hope your guys win a one-on-one. And another thing that I don't like is I really didn't care much for how Jackson Arnold played against Oklahoma. If you go back and you look at the tape, there are several plays where basically he drops back and you can see the wide receivers running the routes, and you'll see a guy open early, and he just sees them and he just clicks off of them and just keeps going through his reads. And then he just takes too much time to just get the ball out. And then he got sacked, I think, 10 times in that football game. So it seems like he doesn't have confidence and he doesn't trust what he's seeing, or he just wants to go for the bigger play. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's something from the neck up. It's something between the ears. That's what's his biggest issue is right now. When guys are open quick, if he can take those and avoid getting sacked, avoid getting behind the chains, Auburn very much has a chance to win this football game. But based off of what I saw against Oklahoma, based on what I've seen from Texas A&M's offense and their defense, I just think Texas A&M, especially with home field advantage, I think they win this game. I trust A&M to score a lot easier than Auburn. I think Auburn, it'll feel like pulling teeth to see them score touchdowns. So that's all the games I'm going to go into a ton of depth about. There's so many football games to talk about. I do want to briefly go over some games that I think are all situations where a ranked opponent plays at an unranked opponent. And all of these games are very much on upset alert. Kind of go through these here quickly. Number 22, Notre Dame plays at Arkansas. And I'll tell you what, Taylon Green, quarterback, is the type of guy that can drag a team to a win. He's that good. With the home field advantage, the Arkansas fans are crazy. It is a noon kickoff, so that does hurt them a little bit, in my opinion. But I am very high on Arkansas in terms of being able to make this game competitive. I'm not saying I'm going to pick them outright, but this is very much a game that I expected to be. It's the fourth quarter. Arkansas has the ball, and they're down by 3 right now against Notre Dame. What happens? So that's a game to keep your eyes on. Also, number 1, Ohio State at Washington. Washington has the second longest home winning streak in the entire country. I think it's around 23, 24. So that's a team to watch out for. They have played well this year. They blew out Washington State in their last game. I think it was like 55-24, something like that. This is still a dangerous team. Jeb Fish is a great coach. Was at Arizona. Once Kalen DeBoer left Washington, he took his spot there. So I'm interested to see there. And Ohio State, they still have some questions, I think, really being super explosive offensively and having a consistent offense. And Julian Sang playing up. So I think Washington is a very loud environment from what I've heard of people that have been there. Even though it's not as many people as a lot of these SEC stadiums, the way it's built is very vertical, and it just feels like the stadium is almost on top of you. And so apparently it's very loud. Apparently it's a great atmosphere. So I am interested to see if they can make that game interesting. Also keeping my eyes on number 11, Indiana, playing at Iowa. Now listen here. At Iowa is where highly ranked Big Ten teams go to die. Ask Ohio State, ask Penn State, ask Michigan, ask any team in the Big Ten that's been successful. They go to Iowa and they find a way to lose because of that scrappy defense. They just do enough. I don't think they win this game, but could be a game that you look up and similar to the Arkansas Notre Dame game, you look up and see, oh, it's a 3-point game halfway through the fourth quarter. What the heck's going on? So that'd be a game I keep my eyes on. My last one is the number 15 Tennessee Volunteers going to Mississippi State. You got the cowbells. You got a lot of noise. I'm interested to see if they can make this game interesting. Obviously, they had a huge win against Arizona State somewhat recently. Mississippi State looks better than I thought they would for this season. I think Tennessee should win. But again, this is one of those that I think as these night games are starting at 7:30, 7:40, and you're looking going, oh, wait, there's a minute left in the game. It's a tie ball, and so has the ball. Let's see what happens here. Or they just started overtime. So you're trying to keep an eye on that while you're watching Oregon and Penn State. You're watching Georgia and Alabama. And so that could be a very fun game to watch as well. I also will briefly talk about the FSU game. That was rough. They started the game so flat, turned the ball over very heavily early, and just felt like every time they'd get a drive going, they'd find a way to end the drive by turning the ball over. And you just can't be a consistent winner whenever you do that. I did think in the second half that they would find a way to kind of come back and claim the lead. But I think Virginia, hats off to them, did a great job of just keeping the ball and having long sustained drives, but then also finishing them with touchdowns. So FSU never got a chance to take the lead late in that game. They would tie it up, and then Virginia would take a long drive and go down and score a touchdown. And then FSU would go tie it up, and then Virginia would have a long drive again. So ended up going overtime, double overtime, and man, I will say that is the quickest field storming I've ever seen in my life. That was insane. All those fans, I mean, they were piling in on that end zone. It's just a hill. There's no stadium. There's no fence there. There's not a stadium or anything. And they just piled on that hill probably midway through the fourth quarter because they could just feel it in the air. I think we might win this game. And time just kept going. Florida State kept fighting back. I think had a great touchdown pass to force overtime late in that football game, but couldn't quite finish it. The stampede of Virginia fans came. I don't know if anyone's heard from Squirrel White because he was on the ground right where that ball got intercepted, and they just ran over him. So I hope he's okay. It reminded me of Mufasa in The Lion King. It's very much what it looked like. Gonna wrap up the podcast here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for staying here. 37 minutes, not too bad. You can squeeze this in a little bit throughout your Saturday morning, your Saturday day, as you're watching all the great games today. Hear my thoughts. I just want to get this on paper and get some thoughts out before the games are played, so then I can reflect and see how either right or wrong I was after the games. I probably will do a reactionary podcast this week, either probably sometime tonight or in the next couple days, so be on the lookout for that. Super excited for this Saturday. I know y'all have to be as well, and we're pumped. Go Dawgs. I hope we take down Alabama. I pray that we find a way to win this game in Athens in front of our home fans. I am very pumped for it. Also, quick reminder, would like to let everyone know that it has been 1,784 days since the Florida Gators have beaten the Georgia Bulldogs in a collegiate football game. Also, we only have 35 days until Jacksonville. Y'all have a good one. God bless.